Hello, welcome back to my garden. And you can tell today we're not in the greenhouse. No, it's a pretty nice day here in eastern North Carolina. I think temperature is supposed to get to around 55, 58, something like that. So today we're out in the front garden beds because I'm going to start my garden cleanup, my spring garden cleanup, because, well, the beds look a mess. Yesterday I came out and I trimmed up the front hedges, which I hadn't done in the fall, which is when I normally do it, fall, maybe early winter. This year I kind of let everything go because I was doing other projects and other things. So I finally gave them the trim that they needed. Now they look great, and then I'll probably get to them again in maybe late summer, early fall. We'll have to see how things pan out this year. And so you may be wondering why I'm starting my garden cleanup now when we're still technically in winter and spring is, because I have a lot of garden beds to do. That's why. I've got my front beds here. I've got all the flower beds to do. I've got the side of the house beds to do. The dahlia bed still needs to be reworked. The rose garden needs a little TLC. Last but not least, the in-ground beds in the vegetable garden. I think there might be poppy seed growing beneath my feet here, so I'm just really careful as to where I'm standing, or kneeling, I should say. Right here, I actually have Stellador reblooming daylily, and all I'm gonna do with this, and some of you may have already started your garden cleanups, some of you may be still buried under feet of snow. Let me know in those comments below. But I'm just cleaning up some of the dead leaves here. And by doing this, I'm able to then also get a better view of what's going on underneath. And I think I just saw something that I didn't want in here, which maybe I pulled it out already. One of the problems I have here in eastern North Carolina in my area is I have wax myrtle, which it's a shrub and it pops up basically everywhere. I've pulled it from plenty of my flower beds, and it grows quite readily from seed, and the birds wind up, I guess, eating the seed and then they wind up doing their business, and then I wind up finding little sprouts or bigger sprouts all over the garden. So I think I just pulled one of those out. And the other issue that I have a lot of times is pine trees. Pine trees, you wouldn't think as a weed, but it is for me. I have pine trees growing all over the garden, in the garden beds. I've had pine trees growing up on the back deck. Anywhere where seedling land start to germinate, a pine tree will grow. So I constantly have to be pulling them out of the ground. It's a tag black-eyed Susan. Allegedly, apparently, there might be a black-eyed Susan somewhere around here. I'm not sure where. We're not going to worry about that at the moment. I'm going to put my tag in my holster there, and I'm going to pick up some of these. So here is a piece of wax myrtle that I pulled out from this shrub here. It would actually grew down underneath the shrub and it was growing up, and I discovered this yesterday, and I've gone and cut it all the way back down to the ground. It'll probably regrow at some point, so I may either have to keep cutting it back down or try to dig it out from amongst the roots of the Japanese holly here, which is going to be a challenge, but this is what I'm talking about. It gets everywhere. And also getting down and dirty here, it allows me to get up close and personal, as it were, to a lot of the plants here in the ground and see what is happening here. And I think this is some sort of echinacea. I'm not sure, but I'm just going to trim it back. I'll leave it there until the springtime. If something starts growing out of it, great. If not, I rip it out of the ground, replace it with something else, and I'm going to have a ton of stuff to replace it with. Right here, I have a couple of agapanthus, and they both look a little pretty. They both look a little rough, but I think they're going to be okay. I think they survived the winter, and I should be seeing new leaves pop up out of the ground, hopefully in the next month or so. Right here, I have a couple of catmints that seem to have survived the winter, which is fabulous. And there's another agapanthus back here, which I'm not, again, just because the top growth is brown doesn't mean it's dead. It may have survived the winter with our freezes and our cold. I will definitely know in the next month or so if it starts to put on growth, and over the next month or so it's supposed to get warmer. Now, we're not supposed to get our last freeze until like the end of March, maybe early April. We'll have to wait and see. And back here underneath this bush, I seem to have found something. It might be another daylily. I'm not entirely sure. And the camera probably won't zoom in on it, but this is something I'll have to probably dig up in the next month or so. It seems to be alive, which is great. a little rough, but it seems to be alive. So probably right after that last frost, late March, I'll dig this plant up and I'll move it elsewhere. And it amazes me that despite the freezes and the snow and the ice, weeds still grow down here. Right here in front of me, I have some Alaskan Shasta daisy, and I'm not surprised that that has survived the cold and the freezes because, well, Alaska. So, but they're already looking good, and hopefully in the springtime I get a nice flush of flowers right here, a nice big clump. And that's one of the things I'm going to be trying to do a lot more of this year, which I failed to do in previous years, is create larger clumpings of plants. So larger groupings, not 2 or 3 or 4, just maybe a dozen or half a dozen, whatever the plant is. For instance, these 4 Alaska Shasta daisies right here, that's plenty because they'll get to about this high and yay wide. So these 4 are okay here, but if I was adding Gomphrena or Salvia, a smaller plant, I'm going to be trying to create larger clumps of them, so this way they put on a larger, bigger show or display. Does that make any sense? Again, experienced gardeners are people with a whole lot more experience than me, which is most of you out there. Leave those comments below. Right here I have the remnants of verbena. This was something I planted here last year, and I'm just going to trim it back. There's already new growth coming up from the bottom, but I'm just going to clean up this top growth here. And the other thing I'm going to do for the time being is just pull these metal stakes out. I'll probably have to re-add the stakes at a later point, but at least for the time being, it just makes everything look just a little bit neater and tidier. Bird bath. I'm going to be replacing this bird bath this year, not because it's no good or I don't like it. Well, I don't like it. I do like it, but I don't like it here. And I started making my own bird bath last year out of concrete, and I have the bowl made and I'm happy with it. The pillar that it's going to sit on, I'm not quite pleased with at the moment. So I'm going to see if I can do another pour when it gets warmer and see if I can make that one nicer, and if that's the case, then that will replace this. But in the meantime, I'm going to dump this out, take it out of here today, and I'm going to put it over in the vegetable garden. This is, I think, the remains of a zinnia. I may wind up having zinnia regrow in this area this year because I really didn't take out the zinnias at the end of the season, so there were some seed heads, and the seeds obviously may have dropped, so they may wind up regrowing. If that's the case, that's fine. I have no problem with that. The deer didn't come into this front area of the house bed to eat the zinnias, so I'm pretty pleased about that. So if they grow out here, great. The look I'm going for the whole front of the house bed areas is definitely a cottage look, cottage garden feel. So a mix mash of plants, and whatever falls and grows, that kind of thing. Here's some of that zinnia I was talking about. Now this right here is a red hot poker, and I think right in here is a couple other irises. So once again, be careful where I kneel. See if I can clean up some of this. Pine tree. Wax myrtle. And with this red hot poker, really all I'm just doing is running my fingers through it and twisting some of these dried stems off here. There we go. The other thing I'm not doing is I'm not trying to get the ground perfectly clean. I'm not doing that because A, I'm lazy, and B, all the material that is left on the ground will rot away. It's actually acting as a mulch. So extra leaves, any leaves that don't pick up, any debris from the red hot pokers or zinnias or anything like that that's left behind, that's just mulch. Does it look pretty? No, but if if I do the garden correctly and I plant as much as I want to plant in these beds, or as much as I think I'm going to, then you'll never see it, because all you'll see is the top green growth of all the plants. So for the short while that I may be looking at some brown debris on the ground, it won't matter. Now I will come back and I will add mulch to some of the spots here in the bed, because the mulch is thin, it's rotted away. I use pine bark mulch. It's what works for me. It's not necessary. It's aesthetically, I would prefer to use a hardwood. The problem I have here with the hardwood mulches is that it gets compacted, especially once it gets wet. It gets compacted and then weeds grow right into it, versus the pine bark, which stays looser and fluffier and it doesn't rot down as quickly. Because of the debris on the ground, it's a little tough to see where I can step. I've got an iris here on either side of my foot. I think if I put that foot there, I should be okay. This was something I probably should have done during the winter time. So I'm just cleaning out this channel that I had going from my downspout, and I found another wax myrtle growing in between the stones. All the way in the back here, I have my black-eyed Susan. It's been there for years, and I probably shouldn't have planted it there, because from my understanding, black-eyed Susans enjoy quite a bit of sun. This plant has done pretty well there, surprisingly. It's grown tall, it's put on plenty of flowers, so it's done well. I am going to grow more black-eyed Susans from seed this year, and I'll be planting them out in probably the flower garden. But this one right here has been doing a-okay. Right here next to me is Naked Ladies. I'm sure there's another name for that, but all throughout the fall, the winter, and then I believe into the early spring, they put on all this leaf growth, where then the bulbs just suck up as much energy as they can. This will all die back by, I think, early summer, and then in the early fall I wind up getting the stems with the flower heads on top, and these are red, I believe. I think there's different varieties. If you guys know differently, leave a comment below, but that's what this grassy stuff is. It's Naked Lady, and every year I forget, but not this year. This year I remember. Right here at my foot is another wax myrtle, and there's a foxglove right here, which is really cool. I don't remember that being there. Right over here, I have my chrysanthemums that I purchased probably during one of those fall things where you buy a lot of chrysanthemums. And they were in pots at once upon a time, but then I planted them out here, and they do really well. Though right now they look terrible with all the top growth on, because it's all dead and died back. It is actually providing the green growth that's underneath shelter. So I think, at least for the time being, I'm going to leave them alone. Just in case we get another freeze, another Arctic blast of some sort. It'll help protect the green growth underneath. And then probably in early March, or probably in mid-March, once the danger of severe freezes is gone, I will cut back that top growth, and then they can do what they need to do. Elsewhere in here, there may be other things like more foxglove seeds that are waiting to come up in the springtime. I'm not sure. I believe I had a foxglove or two right here behind me. So knowing me, I probably took the seeds once they all dried out and just shook them all over here. So theoretically in the springtime, they might all start growing up in here, which is perfectly fine. You may have noticed I have a few of these stones also laying around, so I can see where I'm stepping, not on a plant. And as the garden evolves and it continues to grow, I'm probably going to have more of these stones. Maybe not like this, but maybe I'll make up some round concrete stones and then put them in the flower garden and other places where if I need to move around plants, I'm not going to have to worry about stepping on those plants. I don't know, maybe, possibly. But either way, these stones are here, and really all I do every year is just pull them up, set them back down on top of the existing mulch. The mulch in this area is looking pretty good, so I probably won't add mulch to this area, but definitely in other parts of the bed, I will add more compost and more mulch. Well, that's it. Cleanup is done, at least for now. I will probably, as I mentioned, come back and trim up those chrysanthemums later in the month. I still have to do many other beds throughout the garden here, and I will probably bring you along for some of that, because some of the beds are going to be a little different than others so far as cleanup. Other beds, such as the driveway bed, I don't know if I'll bring you guys along for that unless there's something particularly interesting. But it's basically going to be more of the same of this. The flower garden is going to have some different elements to it, so I'll probably bring you along for a cleanup on that. And there's probably some things in the flower garden beds that I want to show you guys. But overall today, what I've done, I'm pretty happy with. It looks pretty good, at least to me. There's a Batoni that I forgot to move last fall, so I'm going to be moving it this spring. Not now, probably again mid to late March. I just want to make sure that those freezes are gone, because once I tear it up out of the ground, obviously it's going to have some sort of transplant shock, and it's not going to do the plant any good if I dig it up, plant it, and then we get a 30-degree night. Plant's not going to be happy. So I'll have to do that once that danger of frost passes. But overall, I'm pretty happy with it. The other benefit of, and again, experienced gardeners, you probably all know this, if you're a learning or growing gardener, the other benefit of doing a spring cleanup like this, getting down on your hands and knees, getting into the garden, is you can see where you have those empty spots. Maybe you had an annual planted there last year that maybe now you want to put a perennial. So I had, on the one side of the drainage channel, I had zinnias, and I don't know if they're going to come back from the seeds that just naturally fell out of the zinnias this year. If they don't, again, that's fine. I will probably plant snapdragons in there, but I'm sure I'll have something to plant over there to replace that with. Some plants may not have survived the winter, so at which point I'll then be replacing them with others. And then of course other plants, as I mentioned earlier with some of those daylilies, I'm going to dig them up and move them to a better location where they won't collide with the shrubs, whereas now they're going to be colliding with the shrubs because I've allowed some of the shrubs to grow deeper. Yeah, so if any of that makes sense, let me know in the comments below. Again, quick update, I've made some changes to the website. I removed the page where I talked about building my potting bench, and I've now created a projects page. So on that, you'll find the potting bench, and you'll find links to videos and diagrams and other things such as some of my concrete projects. And I have in my head where I might want to try to build myself a wooden wheelbarrow, go old school vintage, make it usable. And if I do that project, I'll bring you guys along for that. Thinking about making a giant sphere or a beehive pot or both, in which case I'll put those links and or descriptions to that as well on that page. So it's going to be, again, anything coming up. If I build a shelving unit or eventually have the funds to build my potting shed, again, all that stuff will be on that projects page. I'll have links to all that there. I have also added a couple of new additional links under the resources, places where I buy my concrete molds. So if you're interested in making your own, this upcoming year, making your own concrete edging tiles, you can head over to my resources page. I think it's under shops. One is garden molds, and I think the other one's history stones, but you'll see the links there. Also under the garden page, where I have an explanation of the whole garden, I have a drawing of the garden, drone photograph of the garden as well. I've added a new section as per the 1 or 2 people that requested it. And that's maps or drawings of the future ideas or thoughts or dreams I have of the garden. So behind the back deck, next to the garage, maybe one day, if I hit the lotto and maybe I can find some young person to help me, I'd like to build a laundry garden. And you'll have to go over to the page and check out what I mean by a laundry garden. Also, I've also put up a drawing of what I'm thinking right now for the grass borders garden, which I'll start this year, hopefully. Yeah, I'm thinking I'm going to start it this year, but I probably won't be planting up until next year, but I'll be putting the structure of the garden itself in place this year. So if you're interested in see how that's going to look, you can head over to the garden page on my website again and just scroll down towards the bottom. You guys will see it. It'll be there. And as I get future ideas or thoughts or just something squirrely in my head so far as an area of the garden that isn't yet developed that I may like to develop at some point in the future, I will post up something there. So if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe, click that bell icon to be notified when I do post up a new video. I don't know what the next video is going to be. I have a couple of thoughts in mind. There may actually be 3 videos this week. So stay tuned. Again, hit that bell icon to be notified when I do post about a new video. And I think with all that being said, I'm going to catch you guys in the next one. Bye-bye.